the sermon, and what we want, we've got 20 minutes, and we want to give these people a chance to answer your question. So if you will state your question succinctly, that'll help them to have more time to answer more questions. Okay, we got it?
Your question.
Oh, I get to stand up here. My name is Joel Amnott, and I am a student. My question would be primarily to Ken's table. If you throw out the theory of evolution on the basis of it has not been proven and there is no proof for it, then how can you support your position as a scientist as there is no proof for any theory? The laws of physics or the laws of, or any of the other laws for that matter have not been proven, and they never will be, because it is impossible to prove a theory, a scientific theory. So I would ask, how would you defend your position as a scientist? How can you call yourself a scientist and yet throw out something because it's not proven?
Okay, thank you for the question. A scientist, the word science means knowledge. A more expanded definition means knowledge we have gained by observation or experimentation. There is no observation or experimentation to say that dogs are going to produce other than a non-dog. So I would say the obvious scientific conclusion is that there's some kind of barrier in there where they're only going to reproduce after their kind. Secondly, I would point out that you made a good observation. Since you really cannot prove either creation or evolution, you have to kind of, you're saying if we can disprove evolution, how can you prove creation? I don't know that I could prove it either, but so my point would be neither theory is really provable in the scientific sense. So my question back would be, why do all the taxpayers have to pay for one religion to be taught in the school system? Evolution's a religion.
Yeah, I think evolution is, if it is a religion, is a teaching which is consistent with the vast majority of Christians, with most of Judaism, and with virtually all of the other religious perspectives in the world.
My name is Matt James. I'm a student at UWF. My question pretty much goes to the creationism side here. I found a lot of your analogies somewhat overgeneralizations and loaded with a lot of self-serving logic, in my opinion, although some were very succinct and cogent. I could pick a variety, the rock, the banana, and things like that, but the one that sticks out in my mind the most is your example of the fruit flies, when bombarded with massive amounts of X-rays and microwaves and gamma rays and whatnot, how they mutated and were thus rendered, inoperable of, sustaining life, and how that was supposed to reflect a process in the theory of evolution that spans many millions of years. And we're talking about a much more subtle exposure to these types of radiation, which in that quantity is extremely harmful. If you put me in a microwave, I'd fry too. So I'm just wondering, in what sense are you, I'm just curious. So.
I'm not sure that I understood what your question was. Your statement about our examples being self-serving or not accurate. Again, I wish you'd be awfully specific. To me, that's
self-serving by the fact that you neglected to mention the specifics of this trial test.
The specifics of what?
This trial, putting fruit flies in.
Okay, the fruit flies, sure, okay.
Yeah, you gestured in some type of microwave and bombarding them with X-rays and microwaves.
Many things were done to fruit flies to cause them to have mutations. We know that mutations happen because of cosmic radiation, X-rays, a variety of sources. Things cause evolution, exposure to chemical, pesticides, things like that. No question. Mutations happen.
My confusion in this matter, maybe it's me, I'll admit that, the way you presented it was that you were offering it in a direct opposition to the process of evolution, which, by all regards, is a very long, slow process. Not something that scientists cook up in 5 minutes in a lab.
Okay.
How is that supposed to substitute?
Okay, let me see if I understand. What you're saying is the fruit fly experiment, they did things to try to speed up evolution. It was a failure. Nothing happened. So therefore, that proves it happened slowly. That's what you're implying.
No,
go ahead.
Let's take it out of the I think the question is, if you apply the radiation in massive doses and you draw a conclusion, how can you draw the conclusion that you falsify evolution, which occurs under very different conditions?
Okay. what evolution do we have? What can we see? What examples do we have of evolution, regardless of the conditions, fast or slow? Please name your best one.
Well, we talk to the fossil record, right? We talk to the obvious existence of extinct and ancient life forms that have all the appearance, unless you believe a very complicated conspiracy theory, they have all the appearance of being millions of years old, right? And also, process of, in hindsight, what looks like the development from one, within one species and across a different species. The record is, you know, there for you to see, but of course, theories do inform perceptual judgments, and if you're not open to this theory, you won't make the perceptual judgments by which this, which are explained by this theory and which support this theory. So again, we're talking past each other, but the point of logic and it being a bad analogy was a very good question, right?
Well, I'd like to talk about bad logic and bad analogy. If you find a fossil in the ground, all you know is it died. You don't know if it had any kids, let alone different kids. So the fossil record, that wouldn't hold up 2 seconds in a court of law. The fossil record cannot prove anything. These animals died. That's all we know. But if you find one that's got some intermediate features, a freshman law student could argue, well, this was an extinct species. It doesn't prove it's intermediate between anything. I'm telling you, they wouldn't hold up 2 seconds. Evolution on trial would lose in the first round.
Well,
there's no evidence for it.
Maybe not in a murder court, but certainly in a civil trial it would probably pass. I think I'd like to talk about the probability issue here, because this is important. This is an old question. It was Hume's question. Basically, what Hume was working on was the question of, you know, gee, this resurrection thing, that looks like a miracle. Now, what I want to do is to set out and show that that's possible. That's what Hume was trying to do. What he gave us out of that process was logical positivism. What Hume created was empiricism. And the question was the resurrection of Jesus that led him to that, into that tactic. That changed the direction of Western philosophy in many respects. And probabilities, you know, ask yourself the question, what is the probability that a living human being who dies is going to get up and walk 3 days later, a corporal being? All right? Now, there's a probability to compute. I don't know anybody who's tried to compute it as a probability. That would seem like a sacrilege. So why are we talking about the probability of evolution occurring in the same, you know, I mean, it's not an unreasonable question, but, you know, the probability of a nuclear bomb going off 20 feet over this building in 8 seconds is practically zero. Unfortunately, practically zero, not completely zero. But the probability that this building will be nuked someday is fairly high. You have to explain the context. And so.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Sternke. I'm a student here at the University of West Florida. And I guess I would like to hear more about DNA. We talked around genetics. We talked around mutation. Didn't talk about Mendel at all. And there, you talk about genetics and microevolution. And yet the DNA code, the information about that is expanding. And we hear new things happening with that every day. In fact, that the DNA strand may have places on it for all the genetic codes possible. And also, I have to say with Nick that I agree that I wish this wasn't such a polarizing issue. I don't see why we have to say one side is right and one side's wrong. But I would like to hear both sides talk about DNA.